Welcome to our first episode of the all-new Hotel Tech Podcast. Hotel Tech Podcast Take Two? I don't know. Anyway, I'm Glenn Haussman. My new co-host is Michael Frenkel. This show is going to be sponsored by Travel Conversations. Really excited to have Michael on board. Michael, now I've known you for a lot longer than probably either one of us would like to admit, but you started in PR, but you very quickly found yourself behind the scenes helping influence companies and the technology they're using. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how you see things in our business.
Well, Glenn, it's a pleasure to be here. It's an amazing time to be starting this podcast. It's a time of unprecedented change in our industry right now, coming off of COVID.
Yep.
Labor issues, economic issues, inflation, war, but there's a constant theme behind everything that seems to be happening these days. The solutions, the big ideas are coming from innovation and coming from technology. So what we hope to do here is examine what innovation is all about, where it's coming from, and in fact, who's driving it, right? Who are the real visionaries who are helping forecast, plan, and in fact, fund a lot of the innovation that we see in hospitality.
And that right there, Michael, is what's going to make this show different from the other ones that you see out there, including my No Vacancy Live show, where we talk a little about what's going on in the property level when it comes to technology and maybe feature some of the suppliers that are out there. But this is all about the big picture and how that's going to translate to profitability ultimately in the end. Hopefully, Michael, we'll be able to drive change, right?
Looking forward to it. At the very least, we'll be able to hear some good stories from real smart people about where the industry's headed.
Right. Now, we figured for the first one, let's go with a big one, right? Let's get everybody's attention right away. And boy, oh boy, you've got great connections in the industry, and we've got someone super, super special to help kick us off on our brand new Hotel Tech Podcast.
Glenn, no one bigger or more legendary in the industry than Leland Lee Pillsbury.
Whew.
Lee is, as I said, legendary in the industry. Great mind behind the growth of Marriott in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, founded Thayer Lodging, a storied private equity and real estate ownership group in the 1990s, and then transitioned that into Thayer Ventures, which has become the leading venture capital investment group funding exactly the kind of innovation and change we're talking about. Lee is also, along with his wife Mary, founder of the Pillsbury Institute for Entrepreneurship at Cornell University at the hotel school. So there's absolutely no one better to kick us off from a high view than Lee Pillsbury.
Sure is. So please be sure to share this show with your friends, your family, your colleagues. Hey, I would say even talk to someone on the street. You don't have to know them. Just say download the Hotel Tech Podcast because we've got the best guests and the most interesting conversation. So let's get it going with episode number 1 and Lee Pillsbury. And here we go. Lee Pillsbury, so great to see you on the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Glenn. Great to be here with you.
It's very exciting, especially since this is our first show that I get to co-host with Michael. Now, listen, you've had a long and storied and legendary career here, right? On the asset side, the financing side, the tech side. I'm really curious if you could tell us a little bit about how the idea of technology as the source of positive change in the hospitality industry became something that you cared so much about that you really decided to do this whole chapter of your career on it.
Well, sure. Glenn, it became really apparent in 1994 with the advent of the internet. And we built the first website for a hotel we owned in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Wow.
And 2 days later, we got an email from this man in Sweden who wanted to know about a hotel reservation. And, we looked at each other and said, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so we started a company called TIG Global with the objective of building websites for all of our hotels. And then a couple of years later, I met a young man.
I don't mean to cut you off, but this is too good not to ask another question on. What was that first website like? Was it just kind of like a brochure saying, hey, we're here, and you couldn't even book on it, right?
No, that's right. There was no booking engine or anything like that. And of course, you had to tell everyone it was http://www and all of that. And so we built websites for all of our hotels, and we started getting these messages from people all over the world. And then 2 years later, I met this young man who was working for Google. And if you remember, or maybe it was Microsoft, actually, it was Microsoft he was working for. And if you remember, they got to work 1 day a week on whatever they wanted to. And he was working on a business idea that he called Expedia.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Yeah. And so he got $25 million allocated to his business, and of course the rest is then history. And what we realized was that the value chain in travel is enormously long and enormously complicated.
Right.
And so much technology can drive efficiency, can drive productivity, can drive access, can drive distribution, can drive marketing. And so we started to see across our hotel portfolio how technology could improve the performance, the experience, and our efficiency in so many different ways, whether it was on the supply side, whether it was on the distribution side, whether it was with our customers. And so we, in our own portfolio, started experimenting with things like websites.
Right.
And so as we got deeper into this, we saw not only the impact it was having on our portfolio, but also the business opportunities that these initiatives had. And so years later, in 2012, we launched what is now Thayer Ventures.
I got to ask you this, and then I'm going to let Michael ask a couple of questions. I don't mean to hog it, particularly our first show out, but I'm curious as to how you recognize this opportunity where so many didn't and still don't in our industry.
Well, I don't. I think the answer is curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
The two most important characteristics, I think, in a leader and an executive today first is curiosity, and second is loyalty.
Right.
And we all talk a lot about loyalty, but equally important is curiosity. We arrive in a situation, we walk into a meeting thinking we know a lot. We've got a lot of education, we got a lot of experience, but I look for people who focus on what they don't know, and who are naturally inquisitive about their surroundings, around their business. Okay, I know a lot about the business, but what is it that I'm missing? What else is going on here? The other element, I think, is looking across other industries and seeing what is going on there that relates to our business. So, if you think about it, inspiration leads to insights, and that's how so much new innovation occurs.
Yeah.
So, Lee, I'm going to add one more element, because you and I have talked about this a lot over the years. You coined a phrase called seeing around the corner and looking around the corner, right? And thinking about where the next big thing is coming from. And one of those early seeings around the corner that you did involved revenue management in the hotel industry, right? Some years ago. Could you tell the listeners that story about revenue management and how you helped discover it in the 1990s?
Well, actually, I didn't discover it. Bill Murad introduced me to Bob Crandall, who was the CEO at American Airlines.
I remember Bob Crandall back then. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I went to Dallas and to the American Airlines headquarters, and he took me into a room full of analysts sitting in front of computer screens, managing the load levels on flights out of all their various cities. And as the load factors increased on a particular flight out of Dallas, they would raise the rates.
Right.
Raise the fares.
Of course.
And so I went back to Marriott headquarters and looked at our hotel pricing, and we looked at a hotel in Denver that had 105 different prices that it could quote.
Right.
The AAA rate, the senior citizen rate, this rate, the corporate rate, that rate. And we had reservations agents answering phones who were being paid $3.75 an hour, and they were negotiating against the vice president of IBM. And,
right.
And you can imagine how those negotiations ended up.
Right.
So, I would say great for IBM.
Yeah. So we developed a approach based really on what American Airlines was doing. We called it rational pricing.
Right.
And we introduced it in this hotel in Denver, and then the following year, I think it was 1984, we rolled it out across the 100 hotels that Marriott had at the time. And in 1 year, we raised the average rate of all Marriott hotels 14%.
Wow.
And you know, Bill Marriott and everybody, we were just thrilled with this. And you know, it was the biggest strategic mistake of my career.
How so exactly?
Well, yeah, I made a huge mistake, which was not apparent at the time.
Right.
At American Airlines, the pricing flexibility is such that people do respond, right? The elasticity of demand, as the economists call it, is greater than one, meaning that people are very responsive, very sensitive to pricing. Hotel pricing, on the other hand, the elasticity is less than one, as we learned in the late 80s and early 90s.
Right.
And so when demand is going up, of course you can raise the rates. When the demand is dropping, cutting rates does not increase revenue.
Or demand, right? It does not induce demand.
It does not induce demand. So the logic behind yield management, which was raise rates when there's more demand and lower it when there's less demand, it was half right.
Right.
It was half right, right? And it took decades to figure out that it was only half right. And in fact,
I'm not even sure that that's been completely figured out either, because you get some of those more skittish hoteliers that'll be the first ones to fall into that same trap over and over again, right?
Over and over. You know, there was two major pieces of research done at Cornell University in the 1990s by a professor named Kathy Enns using Smith Travel Research data that proved conclusively that discounting does not work. However, to your point, I think today there's probably 60% of managers who still don't believe it.
Which is strange, because most hotel general managers, I would say, are now Gen X or millennials or something. So they've been exposed to technology for all or a good part of their lives and should have a better inherent understanding of how all this works.
You hope so. You hope so. But it is tempting. And I think part of it is because those of us in the hotel industry believe that if we have an empty room, we ought to try to fill it.
Right. Michael?
No, and so, Lee, what is it about the hotel industry that at times can hold back innovation, or that makes it resistant to innovation? I mean, why isn't the hotel industry Amazon today? Why isn't it Netflix? Where does the hotel industry need to go to provide that level of business automation, optimization of profits, customer service? What's around the next corner?
Well, let's get to why first. Before what's next. Would it be? I'm going to take a guess here. Too many stakeholders with different goals. How do you?
Exactly right, Glenn. There are just far too many stakeholders, and there's the owner, there's the lender, there's the manager, there's the brand, and on it goes. And there's the suppliers, and there's the technology companies,
right?
And then there's huge costs of change, you know. And the best example of that is our property management systems, the PMS systems, you know, which are these legacy systems, which are enormously complicated, very outdated. But the cost to change them is huge, and the risks associated with changing them are also huge. So it's these legacy systems, complicated by all the stakeholders and the costs.
Right. So you're almost creating a situation, not on purpose, but by happenstance, that is allowing now for new innovators to kind of step right into it and find success, because they're not held back by 40, 50 years of technology baggage, right?
Well, you know, Airbnb is a great example.
Yeah, sure.
You know, in a funny sort of way, and it took them 3 years to to achieve the same enterprise value that Marriott did in 100.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's absolutely insane.
So Lee, if you were starting, if you're a young founder today and you deal with hundreds of them, right, who are out there looking to change things in the industry, where would you be focusing? What would you be looking at as areas that badly need change, where innovators can bring their muscle?
Well, I don't know if it's so much need changes, it's where are the new opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm personally very interested in what's going on in the metaverse. I'm struck by what Zuckerberg has done. First of all, when he changed the name of the company to Meta, that signaled something.
Right.
But now he and his senior executive team have spread themselves around the world, and he's going to spend half of his time in California, the other half of the time elsewhere, quote unquote elsewhere.
Mhm.
And his senior team are all scattered around the world, and they're going to work together in the metaverse.
Right.
And that's I think there's something there for all of us. There's implications for real estate owners here. There's big implications for retailers. There's big implications for hotel owners. And how this evolves is going to be, I think, really exciting. I'm struck by Ralph Lauren spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to build
Right.
a village in the metaverse where people can go and play games and have lunch and try on Ralph Lauren clothing.
Right.
All right. So Citizen M, just this past week, as we're recording this, decided that they're going to start building in the metaverse, for example. How do you see it playing out for hotel brands? Because what I really like about staying in hotels is physically being somewhere different and having those experiences. So why would the average consumer want to have anything to do with that?
Right. So, it may be that you can have the best experiences of your life in the metaverse.
Right.
It may be that that's where we're going. It may be that you can visit Iguazu Falls
Yeah. Right.
in South America in a way that you could never do even in person.
And quite frankly, Lee, I've got the headset and stuff, and I've been experimenting with it because I too see that there's got to be something there. And I've watched some of these videos, and you're right. You are there, and you could look around 360 degrees and see things. And now that I'm getting a little bit older, I'm not climbing up to the top of those waterfalls, but I can still have somewhat of an experience, right?
Exactly. So we're one of the projects that I'm working on is with Sony on the theme parks and virtual reality.
Cool.
And it may be that Disney is outdated. It may be that you don't need 27,000 acres and billions of dollars to have that experience. You may be able to do it all in a outdated shopping mall.
Lee, I think Disney just shut the lights out on
I
us
know.
while you were speaking.
All
there.
right,
They
let's
heard you.
let's just say that part again
problem.
about Disney, if you don't mind. I'm sorry about that,
All right, we'll cut that out.
and I'll do this. All right, please continue.
All right, so it may be that Disney World is outdated, that everything that you go to Disney World to do, you can do in your neighborhood shopping center with virtual reality, augmented reality, holograms, and the other technology.
I just heard Bob Chapek freak out.
Yeah. So
that's a really good point, Lee. So we're really at a point now, I guess, with the metaverse and all of these changes that you saw with the web back in 1994, where there are certain people out there that are seeing value and can see the future, while most are still scratching their heads and not leveraging the apparent opportunity that's there in front of us.
And another example is our NFTs.
Yeah.
Non-fungible tokens.
Sure.
I was talking with a group today that is launching NFTs as a loyalty and a frequency reward program for retailers, and and using the blockchain to deliver NFTs as a way to build repeat customers, customer loyalty, and at the same time collect data on these customers and their preferences and what they're doing. And I think it's a really powerful idea.
Oh, so if it's a powerful idea, what would that NFT be like? Because so far my exposure to NFTs has been, I keep reading stories every day. So and so did a drawing of a donkey and made $1 million.
Trading cards,
Yeah,
right? Baseball cards.
Yeah, right. So this could be as simple as a token that when you've collected 5 of them, you get a 30% discount on something.
Okay, right. And that's good value because it's non-fungible, as you're saying. It is a specific thing in the blockchain that can't be changed or monkeyed with.
Right, and it can't be transferred to somebody else. It's specific to you. You buy 5 cups of Starbucks, and now you get a free latte.
Right, because I think that when we're talking about NFTs, that's the thing that keeps coming in conversation. Is it doesn't seem to make sense to a lot of people, and it seems that everybody thinks it's just a piece of artwork that it's skeptical whether or not you're going to want it or not in the future, right? So
right.
It's interesting to hear this totally different point of view on how it could really be used to add to the consumer experience.
Yes, right.
So
right.
let's shift over to the other side then. We spoke about founders, right? We talked about the metaverse and what's coming forward. Now, what about the hotel brands, right? Which is where you come from originally. I mean, it feels to me like the metaverse is over here, and we got the brands over here who are still trying to figure out the PMS, right? Still trying to figure out how to ring the cash register in hotel. What should the brands be thinking about? How should they be approaching these problems of innovating and finding out what comes next?
Well, I think they've got to look at the metaverse the same way Ralph Lauren does. This is a marketing channel. It's an opportunity to engage with their customers. It's an opportunity to deliver experiences to their guests. I stayed in a Ritz-Carlton over the past weekend down in Cancun, Mexico, and the video content was outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
They just did a remarkable job of selling experiences, and it's easy for me to see how they can take that and build that in the metaverse and further power their brand. So while I was there and physically in the Ritz-Carlton, I saw it and fell in love with it and fell in love with Ritz-Carlton and the experiences they could deliver. But now I'm back home, and I don't have access to that. But in the metaverse, I would, and I will. And I think brands like Ritz-Carlton, like Four Seasons, will quickly figure out that that's a vehicle by which to reach me.
Right, but you're also rethinking the technology from the ground up through Thayer Ventures, right? You're kind of bringing hospitality and technology together with, at least I see, 2 of the ventures that you have out there. I'm talking about Sonder and Lifehouse, for example, right? That's kind of, to me, when we started at the beginning of our conversation, I said you're giving people an opportunity to come in now all these years later. I think these are 2 concepts that are rethinking technology without the baggage of those 40 plus years, right?
Well, it's a little different than that. It's rethinking the business model, and
yes,
and where the costs and revenues are.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So the traditional hotel delivers a set of services and benefits to the guest,
Mm-hmm.
Which the guest values to different degrees, right? So 24-hour room service has a lot of costs and not a lot of value.
Correct.
Right. And all the services and features and facilities of a hotel are like that. They have different levels of costs and different levels of perceived value to the guest. So a company like Sonder is capitalizing on that to say, hey, there are travelers who don't want to pay for lobbies.
Mm-hmm.
right? And don't want to pay for bars and restaurants.
Right.
They want to pay for a great room with a great set of amenities and services. But
Right.
that's all they want to pay for.
And I am one of those people, I must tell you, Lee. I discovered Sonder through Airbnb the first time. Actually,
Uh-huh.
I had not have heard of it before as a standalone organization. I stayed in one in San Diego, 2-bedroom apartment with a producer I was working with, and it was fantastic because it felt like an apartment experience, and we each had our own individual private spaces, and we had a place that we could work together. And I didn't feel like I was missing anything like that bar or 24-hour room service because, quite frankly, I was at an event and I was attending that with those people, so I didn't need that at my hotel.
Right.
So
Right.
a follow-on question to that then, right? So I mean, is a hotel still a hotel? I mean, is a hotel still 4 walls with a lobby, and or is a hotel and shared accommodations and workplaces and other forms of real estate merging in ways due to technology that's going to create something altogether different than we've experienced before as guests?
Well, I think the answer is the guests and the way they use travel, the way they stay, is broadening.
Right.
So we're hearing more and more about staycations, about regional travel.
Digital nomad.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
digital nomad, sure. And so when I travel, I'm a social animal. I don't want to spend a lot of time in my room. I don't want a Sonder room in a condominium.
Right.
I want to be in the Ritz-Carlton concierge lounge.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And in fact, in that hotel in Cancun over the weekend, I came back with 5 email addresses of people I'm connected with, and we're gonna stay in touch.
That's great.
So, but that's me. When I go to New York, I stay at the Cornell Club because it's Cheers, right? Other people like you, Glenn, when Sonder is a perfect product.
Right. Yeah, depending on the trip, right?
Yeah.
So I'm starting to feel, Lee, that we try to pigeonhole people into being a certain thing all the time, but my needs and wants are different depending on what type of trip I'm taking and the purpose of that trip. This past weekend, I was happy to stay in a very traditional select service hotel because we were just using it for a bed and on a college tour where I'm taking my high school senior kids to go see some schools. So I didn't need a lot of stuff, but I did need that coffee and the pancakes or the waffle in the morning.
Yeah, right. Well, at Marriott in the 1980s, when we started this brand expansions, we talked about the same traveler, different trip purposes, and linked them all together with what was then Marriott Honor Guest Awards, now Bonvoy. And that's exactly right. That's
You
exactly
did
right.
something else at Marriott too, Lee, because innovation is also about efficiencies. And tell us about the bills underneath the doors.
Well, it goes back to the earlier comment about the different services, products, and amenities, and what customers want to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days, everybody had to come down to the front desk and check out and sign the bill. And it was very important that you sign the credit card receipt. So we had 100% of our guests having to line up at the front desk, and
Not a great way to end your experience, right? That's the last thing you're gonna remember.
Yeah, that's the last thing, and it was perfectly obvious when I traveled that that's not what I wanted to do. And so I started just walking out of Marriott hotels and figuring that I wouldn't get fired over it. So we said, look, why don't we put the bill under the door? And then, of course, there was a huge debate with our accounting and controllers and all over it. And Bill Marriott, it got to Bill's desk, and Bill said, look, what if somebody's going to beat us out of $100 room bill? How many people are going to do that? 1%. And for that, we're going to inconvenience 99% of our guests. And so he settled that argument very quickly.
Awesome point of view also.
Ladies and gentlemen, the person who invented the bill underneath the door at hotels, Lee Pillsbury.
Well,
and thank you, because I don't think I've checked out of a hotel in my entire career.
There you go.
right, there you go. But now it's not even under the door. Now it's just on your TV.
On your TV.
Right.
Yeah. Or
Right.
cell phone. Lee, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, looking forward too. I mean, one of the things that you've been involved in for years is the Pillsbury Institute for Entrepreneurship at Cornell. You and Mary founded it, I believe, 10 years ago, right? We're at a 10-year anniversary. Tell us about that. Tell us how that factors into everything you've talked about in terms of innovation, change in the industry, and how the hotel industry moves forward.
Actually, this is the 15th anniversary this year.
Sorry.
So, yeah.
Wrong
Yeah.
place.
So yeah. So when I went to college, I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. And it took me a few years at Marriott to figure it out. But what the real driver here,
Right,
is to connect students and academics with industry. And even more important today, most innovation and invention is not taking place in business schools and research. It's taking place out in the industry itself. It's taking place in Silicon Valley. It's taking place in Marriott. It's taking place in all over industry. And we need to get that innovation, that activity, more closely connected to our academics. We need to get them more connected to the people doing this work, and we need to get our students more engaged with them as well. And so that's really what the Pillsbury Institute is all about. And we sponsor trips for the faculty and the students to Silicon Valley,
cool,
to Washington, D.C. We bring literally dozens of entrepreneurs into the Pillsbury Institute as entrepreneurs in residence.
Awesome.
We are building courses on non-academic subjects. We have a very popular course that's oversubscribed every year on networking and how to build and maintain a professional network.
Hey, I just did a seminar for a company on that a couple of weeks ago. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we're working with the faculty. We have fortunately a very active board that are providing a lot of financial support, programming support. So the Institute is able to provide financial support for programming to a broad range of faculty at the hotel school, but also at the business school. We're running business plan competitions across the university and pitch competitions as well. In fact, later this month, there'll be the finals of the annual business plan competition. Has the largest cash prize at Cornell.
Wow.
A $25,000 prize to the winners.
Wow.
And I believe I'm accurate to say that more business startups have come out of the Pillsbury Institute than anywhere else on the Cornell campus.
Wow. Congratulations.
That's right.
So,
it's been a pleasure to be involved with the Institute all these years.
And Michael's played a big active role there. And
all right, yeah, that's awesome. Lee, I got another question for you, right? As the guy who sees things as a customer and then implements them as an entrepreneur, why do I seem to find time after time again that the people that own and operate the hotels don't seem to have any clue about how their guests want to stay in hotels or some of the things that they need in hotels? There seems to be a wild disconnect to me. And all these executives are staying in hotels. Don't they know what they need and want? And why don't they implement it?
Well, it's not that easy to implement. And it is very easy to sit in a corporate office,
yes,
and look at the financial statements and the labor reports and all the other operating statistics and say, well, this isn't right and this could be better, but it's not easy to fix it.
Right.
And and unless you run a business, unless you've had P&L responsibility,
Right.
unless you've had to deal with associates firsthand, unless you've had to deal with the guests across the desk at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's very hard. It's very hard. And I think one of the things that was a hallmark at Thayer Lodging Group for the 25 years that we built and ran that company is that everybody in our corporate office was an operator and had been a general manager and had actually, had to face the customers, hire the associates, and that our approach was, if we're sitting in the corporate office and we see a problem at a hotel in San Francisco, call the general manager. If the general manager doesn't know how to fix it, get on a plane and go out and help them.
Right.
Yeah. And a lot of that, Lee, too, is, you spoke about the metaverse. In a way, we're living in the dataverse now, right? I mean, it's a problem of data. It's a problem of disparate data coming into hotels, filtering through the brands. And I know you've done a lot of work with companies that are working on the data side to try to bring all that data together for hoteliers.
That's true. That's true. And data can tell you the situation. It can't tell you what action to take and how to take that action.
Right.
Interesting. Michael, any more questions from Pillsbury over here?
I don't think so, Lee, other than to ask if you and Mary have been out flying across the Atlantic lately in planes, or what else are you doing to see around corners and keep busy these days?
Well, we were just down sailing in the Caribbean. We took a sailboat out for a week down there.
Wow.
And it's good to see that the Caribbean, which was so badly hit by the hurricane and then really slammed with COVID, the tourist industry there has been crushed for 3 years, and people really the individual hardship down there is just devastating. But it's starting to come back. I was very, very gratified to see it, and I think we're hopefully, on the way to recovery, and I'm glad to hear the government talking about easing mask mandates, and I will tell you that coming back into the United States from the British Virgin Islands, there was a point there in the U.S. Virgin Islands where I actually thought it would have been easier to fly to Mexico and walk across the border.
Right.
I think there's some problems associated with that too, but that's another episode.
Yeah, you don't need to wind up as a headline in the New York Times.
Yeah, right.
That's for sure.
Well, Lee Pillsbury, a man in motion, and in motion on behalf of the industry and innovation. We really appreciate your time today, Glenn. This has been fun. Let's do it again.
It has been, and thank you for helping us celebrate the return.
Thank you both very much.
Yes, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Take care. Bye-bye.